right, we're going to use phase cancellation as a tool. If you've watched the other videos that I was showing you about doing your EQ work and done a real good job of it, you might have already dealt with everything you needed to deal with. Two of the biggest tools you have are high pass and low pass filters. Those are huge tools. So if you've done your EQ work well up to this point and you still got some issues, here's another tool that can really be helpful. You have to understand that phase cancellation is basically attenuating along the same kind of lines as either compression or EQing. Sometimes it'll do it a little bit differently, and sometimes you might get some different effects from it and some different tonal qualities and some different harmonic attenuations in the process. And that can be a little bit complex because the basic concept of phase cancellation is an exact cancellation of inverted waveform from the original, and you get absolute silence. But varying degrees of that and using it to fade it in and mix it can have some different kind of effects as far as cleaning up tracks. And I'm going to give you an example of that. I've got this Arabian track of this singer, and higher end sounds like crap. And so I've done some work on it, and I've EQ'd it, and it didn't sound too bad. On this example, I didn't do any of that, which I should have to show you, but what you could notice was far less. And you watching this video, you might not have been able to hear it hardly at all. The difference, where I can in the studio. Sitting in front of my monitors, but you might not have been able to notice the difference, so I left that off. But you should have low pass, high pass it, and did all the other EQ work you're going to do with it up to this point. Or sometimes this can be used somewhere inserted in between your chain and your processes to deal with some issues. So what I've got here is I've got this vocal coming through here, and what is happening is I've got it. For the first part, I've got this parallel processing chain set up, and what I have is, if you over here on this end, basically I have a low pass filter. And one thing I want to show you about this is that when I'm trying to do this phase cancellation, the problem is that it's only going to cancel when you have a complex waveform. The only time it's going to cancel is if it has an exact inverse of that complex waveform. So you can't kind of EQ one area and put phase inversion on it. It normally won't work. There's probably some techniques to do it, but I haven't seen it done where it was worth any time messing with yet. Which I would love to see that happen, but so far in a processing chain like this, it's not happening. So anyway, so you've got your low pass, and this is the lower end of the vocal content, okay? And that's over here on this side of the parallel processing chain all by itself. And then over on the next side, I've chosen to band pass it, but you could just high pass filter this however you wanted to do it. But I'm going to high pass it for this time, since I didn't do that other EQ work of low and high pass before this, so you could maybe possibly be able to hear the difference. And then that's here. And then you have over here is an exact copy of that one, of this one, an exact copy over there. And then you have some type of inverter, to invert, to do inversion, invert the polarity, flip the phase, however you want to say it. So I've got that set up there. Now if I go over here and I just clip that off so you can't hear this low end of the vocals. And one thing you want to be real careful of, you can't see it on this one, but sometimes, most all the time, and when you've got this low pass filter on the low end of what you're trying to work on, and then you're going to have another one up here on the high end, that where this starts going up and where this correlates going down for this pass area and this up area, that you really have to pay attention to that, because sometimes you will get boosts of frequency content in here because of the parallel processing chain and or attenuations in that mid area between this EQ and this EQ and what it's doing in that mid area. So that mid area you really got to pay attention to. So like if you're going to low and high pass, you're low passing it up to here. Then you go up to the high pass filter and you're, well, okay, you're going to high pass it down to here so it crosses over in here somewhere in there where these come together well, so that when you listen to the low end and the high end separate, that you haven't lost anything in the vocal. And if you play the two of them together, that it basically sounds fairly close to the original track. And it's not a bad idea to take a copy of the original track, put it on another track, and A-B it until you get the slow pass and the high pass filter to where when you have them both enabled, that an A-B back and forth to the original track with no kind of processor on it, that it sounds just about the same. Does that make sense? And that's a real important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time working on this, but you just running this low pass and the high pass up, back and forth, and A-B comparing it with the original track, then until you get it to where it sounds the same, so there's no difference. That way, when you listen to the low end by itself and you listen to the high end by itself, that there's separate waveforms basically coming into here, and they will sum over here, but they are separate. That way you can do phase cancellation over in this area. But when you listen to the two of them together, that those two, before you copy it over to this one, that you're A-Bing it between the original to make sure there's no difference in sound. You haven't EQ'd anything out or boosted any frequencies or any frequency content or harmonics in those areas in the center where those two EQs meet. And I hope I made that very clear, because that's a very important point, that you basically, that it's real simple understanding, and you just got to fudge with it until you get it to where it's like that. Next, you'll sit here and you can listen to this, and you've got like the high end here, right? So you've got, this is the part that this is the actual area that we're having an issue with, okay? So when you're listening to that, or you come over to here and you want to take this and put this back on and listen to this and cut that off, and you play it again, you got your low end there. Now you got your low end and your high end separated. So the next thing is you cut this off, and then you go back and listen to that, and make sure that when you enable your inversion, phase inversion, or polarity inversion tool, whatever you do. I use a real simple one so you can see one knob, dude, and it's just inverted. That's all I mean, if whatever tool you got, but this one works fine, and I'm sure that there's lots of, I mean, you could get a billion of them if you wanted, but find one that does a good job and stick with that. Anyway, when you turn that on and you're listening, that you've got complete total phase inversion. Okay, now we've talked about, now that's still playing, and if I turn it back on, you've got that phase inversion working quite well, and it's completely canceling it. Now, when you're doing the EQ work, and you're doing some compression, like multi-band compression, those things are doing some of the same thing that's happening here by phase cancellation, but this does it a little bit differently. And it's actually, the concept is almost the same as attenuating those sinusoids in the area that you're trying to phase cancellate. Does that make sense? And the actual concept isn't any different than turning the volume down on that frequency content, or putting a compressor on that area, a multi-band compressor, or even EQing that, compressing that area and trying to attenuate those areas of frequency. Same kind of concept. But sometimes people pull out multi-band dynamics for a reason, because it might sound different than just compressing it with EQ, where this is the same kind of thing. This may sound a little bit different and help clean it up a little bit differently or better, depending on what you got going on in your track, trying to clean up some distortion or attenuate some frequencies or stuff like that. Does that make sense? So that's the same concept to understand why you might want to do this. Now, you've got that going like that, and this is basically playing, and you've got it going along, and you've got it on there. Okay, so you've got it going. Just want to make sure, and you put those two together. Now you've already checked to make sure that with them together that it matches the original, that you've matched A beat against the other one, so there's no difference. Now what you can do, you can do a lot of things with this, but basically we're just trying to deal with this from the aspect of phase cancellation and using it to try to deal with problem frequencies. Now this could be a little teeny area up in here that you've tried to EQ because of the vocal arranging it, or some high end or low end, or any area in there that's been having problems. You can even put 3 of those on there and be working on the center part, as long as you put 3 EQs, low past it, high past it, and center past it, until you get those 3 EQs to where there's no difference from that sound with them all on than there is from the original vocal before you start trying to mess with it. But here's the cool thing. You've got that like that, and you've got that phase inverted. Well, that area that you were having a problem with is gone. So, and then as you try to, you can use your volume knob to actually work on adjusting that. And almost working the same way like multi-band compression or an EQ, but a little bit differently. So you got a whole new tool that might possibly sculpt the sound a little bit differently and get the job done a little bit differently. Because like this track, that wasn't working. I tried multi-band compression. I tried EQing it. Nothing dang worked. I mean, I couldn't get rid of that sound. It kept coming back, and I was like, well, I couldn't find any other way to deal with it. So then you got this tool, and you got it set on there. You've got it phase inverted at 0 dB, so it's complete silence, and you just got the low end coming out. Then hopefully you could hear the difference. As I started bringing this gain down from the side that I had used and set up to do phase cancellation, that you could hear it starting allowing this frequency content in the area I was having issues with to start coming through and to start blocking it. And it'll work a little bit differently if you do it the other way also. So basically, it just sometimes pushing up the dB of this one over here or dropping it will have it will actually give it a different tonal quality. I mean, it's really, I mean, it does, and you can listen to it and you'll be going, well, wow. I mean, it's actually shaping the timbres differently as it phase cancellates from that one being pushed up or coming down against the other one. And it's really a cool effect. And it can really trying to deal with harmonic content you're having issues in a really cool new way. And also that when you get done with that point, that you can always throw on, another EQ on after it to do some little fine work, or a multi-band compression even after it, using this as an initial stage, as the 3 of them as tools that work together. And this becomes another tool in your tool belt to sculpt your music and make something beautiful. Peace, hope, love, dude. Have a nice day.